I've just bought myself this new home cinema projector, and today I'm going to be trying it out for the first time. As you can see, it is an Anker Nebula Cosmos 4K SE, and this is the first time I've bought a home cinema projector in over 10 years. So I'm interested to see how much the technology has improved or changed over that time. Now, this one cost me £900. That isn't the official price. That's the price for a refurbished model direct from Anker themselves. The official UK price is £1,300, but currently, at the time I'm making this recording, you can find these for £1,100 brand new because there's a £200 off voucher being offered by Anker. And I think the reason that voucher has appeared is because they've just introduced a new one. This was one that came out at the end of 2024, but there's now a new model in the range. And that happened after I placed my order. So I thought, oh, flipping heck, I've just ordered the old one now that a new one's out. But it turns out their new model, the X1, is the new flagship one. And it costs over twice the amount of this. Now, this being a refurb direct from Anker, I'm hoping that the quality of an Anker refurb is the same as one from Apple. I've bought plenty of Apple refurbished products over the years, and they're indistinguishable from new. Hopefully that's the case here. I suspect whoever bought this, if somebody actually did, they probably got it out of the box, put it on a table, realised it wasn't suitable for their environment, put it back in the box and sent it back as quick as possible. I suspect if I look at the hours that this one's been used in the menu somewhere, if that information is available, that it'll be a very small number, but we'll find that out. Let's get it open and have a good look. Now, obviously, you don't buy something this expensive without doing a bit of research, and I've been doing just that. I've read through loads of different reviews and they've all been overwhelmingly positive for this particular model. Of course, it all very much depends though on whether it's suitable for my particular environment as to whether or not I'm going to like it. We'll find out. So opening this up, so far everything is looking pretty much as good as new, I think, in here. Let's get down to the projector though. Right, lift this out. Oh, it's got some weight to it. Not too much though. Yeah, feels solid. Right, so this will have the power lead in it. And this one should have the remote control, which I believe is backlit. We've also got, if I can get that out of there, a Euro style plug. So we can put that to one side. Now our remote control here has a bit of plastic on the end, which is nice to see. Take it off. Now you can see at the bottom here, we've got YouTube, Netflix and Prime Video as hotkeys. This runs Google TV, and Google TV has the Netflix capability. I believe that isn't possible if your projector is one of the models in this range that's running Android TV, but I'm not too familiar with it. I just need to know that this one does everything I need. Another thing that this one does, it has stereo speakers, one either side, 15 watts a piece, which I believe sound very good from what the other reviews say. So really you can just plonk this down and it does everything you need. As long as you connect your power up, you can stream your video to this and then project it out to your screen. We've got two HDMI sockets, which is essential for what I'm planning on, which is plugging a Blu-ray player into HDMI 1 and an Apple TV into HDMI 2. Now, you might be thinking the Apple TV is duplicating some of the inbuilt functionality. After all the same apps that I could be watching on that as far as streaming goes, I'm sure are available on Google TV. But the difference is that this is a HDMI that supports EARC, the Enhanced Audio Return Channel. So my intention is the Blu-ray audio will come out of this second HDMI off to the Apple TV, which will then send it off to a pair of HomePods. And that wouldn't be possible if I didn't have two HDMIs and one of them wasn't EARC compatible, which is one of the reasons I chose this particular projector. If you wanted to, though, you could also send your audio out in stereo over this auxiliary port here. But of course, I will be testing the internal speakers as well. But now, as far as features that this doesn't have, well, it doesn't have a battery built in. It's not a rechargeable device. It's strictly run from mains power only. And another feature that some people might be looking for is an optical zoom, and it doesn't have that either, although of course you can adjust the image via various means, the simplest one of which would be positioning it closer or further away from the screen to adjust the size of the display. But of course it doesn't just stop there. There are menu options that enable this to automatically sense where the screen is and adjust the image to fit the screen, and also automatically adjust the focus. And those are features that I'm interested in testing out. One reason in particular is that if you were to put a projector dead center of the screen in front of you, well, you've got a projector in the way. So the ability of a device like this to be put down at an angle like so, and then adjust the keystoning and correct the image so that it fills the screen even though the projector is out of sight, is something that I think is very interesting. Now, of course, using those kind of electronic adjustments does affect the quality of the image. But for my needs, I think the convenience will outweigh that issue. But we'll find out. Okay, now whilst my modestly sized 80-inch projection screen rises up majestically behind me, I just wanted to go through a few of the specs on this. So first off, the light is produced with a hybrid system, a laser plus LED light system, which has a 30,000 hour life on it, so that seems sufficient. The box does boast though that produces 1800 ANSI lumens of light output, and whilst it does, that only applies to the conference mode, and you wouldn't tend to be using a projector in your home in conference mode. So the mode you're more likely to set this to, your kind of home cinema ones or Dolby Vision, that kind of stuff, it's going to be more between 1300 and 1400 lumens output produced in those, which is why when it says on here it can produce an image of up to 200 inches, you should perhaps take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because yeah, in theory it could, but you probably wouldn't want to. You'd have to have a completely blacked out room, you'd have to have the projector a long way back, but in addition to that, the image wouldn't be perhaps bright enough for many people. You're much better off with a screen that is a little bit more modest, perhaps not down to my 80-inch one, but you know, maybe like 100, 150 inch maybe as a maximum. But yeah, probably won't go all the way to 200 inch with this particular projector. I think you need something with a bit more light output for that. And it does support 4K HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision HDR. Should mention though that for gamers it only goes up to 4K 60. It doesn't support 120. Now, like other 4K projectors in this price point, it produces the 4K image with pixel shift technology and a 1080p sensor, which immediately sounds like, oh, well, that's fake 4K then. No, it does produce a better image than a 1080p. It might be a little bit less than a proper 4K sensor, but for most people, I believe they can't tell any difference. And even when they're properly looking for it, and on an 80-inch screen, I certainly wouldn't be able to. Maybe at that 200-inch one you could, if you could even see the thing in the first place. It's a well-established technology. It's used by a lot of different projectors. I just wanted to mention that though. Now, one thing that isn't on the box is 3D. And when this came out, it didn't support 3D. But there was a firmware update, which was promised from the beginning, and that did introduce the ability of it to support 3D. So that's with DLP link glasses, active shutter. So I've got some of those somewhere. I'll dig them out, see if they still charge up, and perhaps give that a go as well. Okay, enter the stand man. And as you can see, this is on casters. It's easy to move around. It can also be adjusted for height, and it has a tripod screw mount on the top. So my intention for this is to perhaps place it in the middle of the room and have it at the height roughly equivalent to the bottom of the screen. But you know, I can move it around quite a bit, and it's a lot more flexible than some of the stands that I've seen that are purpose made for projectors. So we'll see if this one works out or if it was a terrible idea. But one thing about this is that with this tripod screw mount on here, we've got the equivalent hole on the bottom of the projector, so it's just a matter of attaching the two things together. So I think it'll work. It's worth trying out. The handle on this, people have mentioned the handle is very useful. Not all these portable type projectors have a handle on them, and indeed I agree with that. It's very useful, and you don't want to drop something that costs this much, so it does provide a bit of security with it. So let's just tighten that up. There we go. What do you think about that? I think that might work. And very easy to move around. and very stable as well, not going to fall over, and easy to store out of the way. So what I'm going to do now is get it all set up just how I like it. I'm going to use it for a few days, and I'm going to come back to you with my impressions, a list of pros and cons perhaps. Hopefully, if I do that, it's mostly pros, given the fact I've already bought this one, but we'll find out. So to you, that's going to be coming along in a second or two, but for me, it's going to be in a few days' time. And you can always tell if I've jumped forward in time because I should have changed my shirts. Okay, so at my end, it's almost a week on now since the last section that you saw, and in this time, I've been getting familiar with the projector, trying all its different settings, getting things just how I want. Of course, I've been watching some things on it as well, and I've also been trying to find the best position for it in this room. Now, it's great that it's got these speakers either side, because that makes it an all-in-one device, pretty much essential to put those on something like this for quick impromptu sessions, just plonking this thing down on a table. You've got your audio, your video, you're all set to go. However, in my use, I found that it wasn't an awful lot of use, because to really appreciate the sound quality, you'd have to kind of have it dead center in front of you, so you got the proper stereo effect. I found having it to either side, which is what I'm doing in here when I'm testing it, it just sounded a little bit odd, as it did with it behind me. But of course, you've got options. You can send the audio out of this via Bluetooth to either speakers or a set of headphones. You've got a 3.5mm jack on the back of this as well. You can connect that up to surround sound system. Of course, it's going to be in stereo, but yeah, there's things you can do other than use the built-in speakers. However, if you do use these, they sound really nice. They've got a good rich sound quality to them, plenty of bass. Really pretty nice speakers, and in fact you can just use this as a Bluetooth speaker setup. You can send the audio to this device as well as sending it out of it. It would be a pretty expensive Bluetooth speaker set if that's all you used it for, but yeah, there are plenty of options. My intention with regards to the audio was not to send it out over Bluetooth or use the built-in speakers, but instead to route the audio via HDMI using EARC, and it would go off to an Apple TV, which then had the duty of sending that off to a pair of HomePods. And I'm happy to say that that setup is working perfectly. Whether I'm watching the Apple TV apps or the Blu-ray that's plugged into the other HDMI or the built-in Google TV apps, all the audio is coming out through the HomePods, and it really sounds pretty good as well. But talking of Bluetooth, it's perhaps worth me mentioning that the little backlit remote control that came with the projector communicates with it over Bluetooth, so you don't need to point it at an infrared receiver. In addition to this, in my setup, it's operating all the functions of the Apple TV as well. The only one it's not doing is the Blu-ray, which I've got a separate one for that. It's not that I haven't used the Google TV though. In fact, you have to, because that's the operating system for the projector. So whilst I've used their apps, which many of course are duplicates of the ones on the Apple TV, you have to actually wait for the thing to boot up ever so slightly before you can operate any of the functions of the projector, get into the settings and things, because that's all within the same interface. I found all the setting and adjustment menus to be really quite intuitive though. I never struggled to find anything that I wanted to. Some of the ones I needed to find were under advanced menus, but that was just to keep things tidy. It's all there if you go looking. One feature I immediately deactivated though was the image smoothing stuff. That's perhaps the only cryptic setting, as it's under a menu labelled MEMC, which stands for Motion Estimation Motion Compensation. I think it's a standard terminology. Perhaps we'll see it more in the future. Now, it's factory set though to medium, and of course that gives everything that weird artificial soap opera look. So yeah, that got switched off. With the projector having Google TV built in, you can also use apps like Kodi or VLC to play videos off a USB stick. I attached up a small SSD to mine and tried a few MKVs without any issue. It also played AVIs just fine, of course. The USB supports NTFS and FAT32 file systems, but if you want to play from a drive that you've formatted as exFAT, you can via the MX Player app. Now, there are two main reasons why I chose this particular projector, the Anker Nebula Cosmos 4K SE, over its predecessor, which doesn't have the SE suffix, but can now be found cheaper than this one. And the first of those reasons is this one has 2 HDMI sockets on the back. The other one just had one, which of course enables me to attach up the Blu-ray, the Apple TV. But also this supports EARC, the other one didn't. Reason number 2, this one has better automatic one-touch setup capabilities than that one. I just like the idea of being able to move this projector around, and then with the click of one button, it automatically sets itself up for its new location. So just to elaborate here, in an ideal setup, you have the projector dead center of the screen. You also make sure the lens is level with the bottom of the section that you want to project onto. So in this case, I'd have to move this up a little bit, like so. Alternatively, you could mount it off the ceiling, flip the image in the settings, and make sure that it drops down far enough so that the lens on that occasion is level with the top part of the screen that you want to project on. But of course, on top of that, you've also got to make sure that your projector is the correct distance away from the screen so the image fills it up. Too close, it's too small; too far away, the image spills over the edge. Now, of course, there are projectors with optical zooms. This doesn't have that. And with those, you'd adjust this setting to try and get the image to fit on your screen. Although, in my experience, the optical zoom tends to be quite a smallish range from one end to the other. So you do want to get your projector in roughly the right distance away to start with. Now, the throw distance calculator on Projector Central is always really handy when it comes to choosing a projector, just to see if it's going to work in your space. For example, with this one, you put this into the calculator and it tells you that for a 95-inch screen, which is what I've got here, I'll explain what happened to the 80-inch in a moment, but for this size of screen, this projector has to be 2.52 meters away in order for the image to fill it up. That's 8 foot 3 inches, which is the same as the current world's tallest man, Sultan Kozan. Anyway, those are the settings and adjustments that you need to get just perfect in a dedicated home cinema. However, this projector, it's got a handle on it. Clearly, it's designed to be moved around. The problem comes, though, when you move a normal projector just a tiny amount, you need to go back and adjust all your settings again. You need to make sure it's the right distance away, you've adjusted the focus, and the keystoning. The keystoning, for anyone that doesn't know, is really the geometry of the image. If you were to put a projector low down and point it up at the screen, it's going to have a wider image at the top than it is at the bottom, and then you get your keystone adjustments to squash that in. Now, that would get pretty old very quickly with a portable projector. If every time you move this thing around, you had to go into some settings menu and adjust everything to get it just perfect, you'd be very reluctant to move it. So, of course, things have moved on. This projector can make all the necessary screen fit and focus adjustments automatically, and you can have it do this at each startup or whenever the projector's physically moved. It can tell this, and it can auto readjust then, and you can also do it at the push of a button on the remote control. Now, it can auto adjust the color temperature as well to get the right white balance for the surface you're projecting onto, which is useful if you're using it against a painted wall. And it can also adjust to the level of ambient light, and all these options can be deactivated if you'd rather do it manually. To make these adjustments, it uses a time of flight sensor as well as projecting a grid image on the screen, and then it automatically adjusts so that that image is in focus as well as lined up with the edges of the screen. And this all takes just a few seconds. And to me, this is the feature that's proved invaluable with this particular projector, because I've tried it all over the place. I've had it on the left side of the room, the right side, various different heights. I've put it on this desk and adjusted the height of that as well. And in the end, I settled for it being on the shelf behind me, and it's working just fine up there. That's where it's staying for the moment anyway. I just like having the flexibility of changing these things around. But I know what will be happening. The home cinema nuts at this point will be going extra nuts to tell everyone that these auto adjustment features will reduce down the quality of the image, which is understandable because, of course, they probably do. They're squashing it in various different ways. I know for a fact that my BenQ 1080p projector that I used a decade ago in the home, I had to have that perfectly straight onto the screen at exactly the right height, because if I adjusted any of the keystone settings, just one click, the image noticeably softened. And something like that might well be happening here. But you've also got to bear in mind that we're talking about a 4K projector here. So if the image quality is reduced slightly from being a 4K image, well, we've still got plenty to play with. Now, of course, whilst the auto screen fit stuff is really very clever and works the vast majority of the time, it's not perfect. One of the features it's got is an automatic object avoidance. That's if you've got something between the projector and the screen and it's going to be casting a shadow on it, it moves the image away from that, so it shrinks down the image and puts it somewhere else on the screen. Well, it does this automatically, and in my case, when I was moving it around, it said object avoided, and it squashed the screen down a few times. And I'm trying to think, what did you see? I couldn't see anything between you and the screen. I would have preferred it if I could switch that setting off. So it didn't do the object avoidance. It left it full screen, and then I could see the shadow of the thing and then move it out of the way. But unfortunately, the two things are linked together. Now, as for that auto fit, it works really well, but it can't work miracles. You do need to have your image lined up roughly with the screen. That grid pattern has to be visible in the center of it for the system to work. The light from the projector needs to spill over the edges of the screen by at least 10% for the auto fit system to have something to work with. But perhaps I should mention that if you have your projector so close to the screen that the image can't fill the whole of the space, well, it doesn't have the magical ability to stretch the image out. No, it's down to you to make sure you get the projector far enough away. Now, with the projector located here, it's getting towards the limits of its distance from the screen before you have to start adjusting things manually. Under 4 meters, it can automatically readjust. Over that, it's a bit touch and go. Of course, at any distance you can do manual adjustments yourself, and you might find that you need to do those to tweak things ever so slightly, but I've found that more often than not, if it gets things wrong, I just press the automatic configuration button again, and it tends to get it right on the second go. Now, in the comments to the previous video, countless people suggested that I should mount my projector from the ceiling. But that was despite the fact in the video I'd mentioned this ceiling isn't really designed to have any kind of weight hanging off it. This is a prefabricated building. The roof's made of a compound of various different materials. I think there's some kind of polystyrene in there, plasterboard, insulation, that kind of stuff. But it's not got big wooden beams in this, so nothing that I'd really want to hang anything off. It's not designed for that. I mean, think of it as a mobile home, like a trailer. For a modern pop culture reference, think of the Rockford Files. You never saw Jim Rockford hanging a 4K laser projector from his ceiling, did you? But of course, I'll be told I was wrong again, and yeah, this is definitely fine for hanging things off. So let's change tact on that and say that I don't want to hang anything off this lovely, pristine white ceiling. It's a preference thing, and it's a preference that I don't want to hang a projector off this roof. However amazing it could be at supporting the weight of a safe full of gold bars. However, if you decide that you want to hang your Anker Nebula Cosmos 4K SE off the roof of your prefabricated garden office, then bear in mind this thing weighs about 4.5 kilograms, that's around about 10 pounds. And of course, yeah, you can hang it upside down and change it in the settings to have the image flip the other way up. You can also have it back projected if you wanted to do that. But one thing to bear in mind, if you did have it hanging from a ceiling, where do the flipping wires go? I mean, on mine, I'm going to have 3 wires going into this, 2 HDMIs and the power lead. I mean, where am I supposed to put those? It's fine in perhaps a house, and you could drill into the roof and put things in the void. There's no void in here. So for me, in this location, putting this on a shelf makes a lot more sense than putting it on a ceiling mount. I can lift it down very quickly and easily if I need to move it somewhere else. And in addition, if it was attached to the ceiling, well, the projector has to go the other way up, which means the handle's hanging down underneath, which looks a little bit odd. But in addition, the lens is also, of course, towards the bottom of the unit then, and the projector mount would tend to have a bit of a drop on it from the ceiling to enable it to be articulated. So it's quite possible that lens might end up a little bit further down from the ceiling than it is now. And as it stands, the image that's projected onto the screen from this, well, it just clears the top of my head from my seating position down there. If it was any lower, you might get a bit of a dome towards the bottom of every image. Now, for anyone with a long memory, you'll perhaps recall that at the beginning of this video, I started off with a 80-inch screen, and yet the one behind me, and the one I've been doing all this testing with, is a 95-inch. Well, the story about how I came to find this, that was something I just put on Patreon as a bit of an extra video, because it's one that I'd forgotten I got. However, let me just show you that behind this, I do have, look if I can get it down, the 80-inch screen. So I could do a bit of a test to show how easily and quickly the projector can adjust to either of these sizes of screen. So let's just have a look at that. Now, at the distance away from the screen I had the projector when it was up on the shelves at the back there, that was far enough away to be able to produce a 150-inch image. And of course, it's then squashing that down to fit this 95-inch screen, which then got me thinking that perhaps that's compromising the image quality too much, and I get a much better image if I was to put the projector more in the position where it's supposed to be for a screen of this size. So I put it on my height adjustable desk, which is behind me, and it's just up there at the moment. And I've got to say, I haven't really noticed any drastic difference in quality. I mean, that could well be down to the quality of my eyes or the content that I was watching, but no, I'm happy with it in either position. Now, this room, this structure that I'm in, was never put together with the intention of it being a home cinema. It was always to be a YouTube studio type area with a further area for all my hi-fi gear, as well as a bit of additional space to try a few different things out in, one of which is the home cinema. Yeah, but it's very much a pop-up setup, this one. If I'm going to watch a UHD Blu-ray, I'm more than likely going to do that in the house. In there, I've got my 77-inch OLED TV, I've got a 7.1.4 surround sound system, and I've got a nice couch, and perhaps most importantly, easy access to the loo halfway through a movie. You know, when you get to my age, you're not going to make it all the way through a movie. Anyway, the reason that I mentioned that is that not the loo bit, the OLED TV, that can't do something that this can. Whilst the quality of the image out of this is nowhere near as good as if I had a 100-inch OLED, the projector can do 3D, whereas the OLED TV can't. Now, the previous OLED I had, a smaller size screen, that one could do. It used a passive 3D system. It was a 4K screen. I got full 1080p each eye. It was a really impressive effect, and a lot of people are big fans of that and were very disappointed when that was dropped as a feature when they announced the next year's TVs. And of course mine is a few generations on from the passive ones, and yeah, you can't get those anymore. This though uses the active 3D system, DLP link glasses, and it supports side-by-side, over and under, and frame-packed 3D. So I dug out some active 3D glasses, charged them up, and tried it out. And I'm happy to say that it works just fine. Or at least it does as far as I can tell, given that I've got one slightly dodgy eye. But yeah, if you want to watch your 3D Blu-ray movies, this seems like a decent option. Gotta say, I forgot how dodgy the computer-generated Jeff Bridges looked in this. It's like something off a PlayStation 3. Now, in the previous video, I misremembered the size of my lounge television. I said it was a 75-inch, it's actually a 77-inch. But what that means is that compared to this 95-inch screen, that 77-inch screen is 19% smaller diagonally, but it's actually 34% smaller when it comes to the overall screen area. And in addition to that, in the lounge, because of the way the furniture's set out, I'm sitting about 12 feet back from that 77-inch screen, where here I'm sitting about 9 feet back from this 95-inch screen. So whilst the picture quality can't match up with the OLED, the overall size makes this a completely different experience. But yeah, of course, an OLED TV has a projector beaten on black levels, colour intensity, contrast and brightness, and you can watch a TV with the lights on in the room. The images on the projector never seem to go truly black. It doesn't get to that inky black dark level that an OLED can. The rainbow effect is sometimes noticeable on the projector if there's a large bit of white text that's displayed against a black background and I were to dart my eyes quickly across the screen, I could see it briefly, but that's also something that I've noticed on all the DLPs that I've had, but it's never really bothered me on any of them, although I do know that some people seem to be particularly negatively affected by that. It's just fortunately I'm not one of them. But yeah, you sacrifice the picture quality of an OLED to get the bigger image of a projector. It's a trade-off. Now, I just want to mention that the ratings website has a particularly good page about the seating distance that you should have for a particular size of screen. Over the years, there have been plenty of different calculators, but a lot of those are a bit out of date because they're going on about sort of standard definition images or HD, but not 4K. The ratings one seems to be up to date, and it suggests that you should really get a 30-degree field of view. The image should fill out 30 degrees of your field of view for mixed content. I presume that just means like watching TV, perhaps some sport or something, because the other one, it refers to movies, and for movies you're supposed to have like a 40-degree field of view, and to achieve that with a 95-inch screen, your seating position has to be around about 9 to 10 feet away, and that just so happens to be exactly where I'm sat. Purely by luck, there was no judgment in this, it's just where the seat goes and where the projector screen goes. But by chance, I've happened to come across the correct solution. So yeah, I'm getting about as good a effect out of this as I can. Now, I will mention one thing, with having the projector there, the sound of it isn't annoying. It's a very quiet projector as far as like the fan noise goes. I mean, of course, you can have different pitches of fan noise, and sometimes if they can be quite quiet but a bit whiny at the same time, you really notice those. This is a kind of very low down note. In fact, my air conditioner makes more of a noise than this, and it's further back in the room. So yeah, as soon as you get the sound on, you really don't notice it at all. You know, it's funny, this home cinema stuff, it's much like the hi-fi stuff. You get some people that get a little bit too into it, and after the last video, I got some really quite abusive and very long emails and messages complaining about everything that I was doing and I got everything wrong and all the rest of it. Remember, none of these videos are instructional. They're not telling you what to do. They're just showing what I'm doing. So the thing that they'd forgotten was that I'm not them, which I'm very glad about because it seems they're living a very miserable life. Oh, and another question that I got a surprising number of times was, where am I going to sit? Well, the surprising answer is on a chair, but I've got another one as well. Hold on. If the missus ever decides to join me in watching a Kung Fu movie marathon, well, I've got a chair ready for her as well. Yeah, very comfortable. Now, during this project, I've been in the fortunate position of having some old tech that I could bring into use, which kept the overall costs down. A couple of old projector screens, couple of old version 1 home pods, stands, various things like that. There was one unexpected cost though, and it's with regard to these blinds. You see, if you just saw the previous video, you'll have noticed I had an issue with too much light coming through here. This projector really wants a very dark environment to be able to produce a good quality of image, and even with the blinds down, there was still enough light coming through to disrupt that. So I got some temporary stick-on blackout blinds, which worked really well, and if anything, they just proved to me that I could have done with getting some blackout blinds in the first place. So I thought it would get pretty tiresome putting those things on and taking them off every time I wanted to use the projector. So I ended up going back to the company I got these from and swapping the blinds out for some proper blackout ones. And they do make the room really nice and dark. The reason you can see me now is because there's quite a few lights on behind the camera. But if I was to turn all those off, this environment gets really very dark, and it's perfect for using this projector in. So yeah, you've got to bear that in mind. You've got to have a room that you can get at a nice dark level. Of course, with some ambient light, you can mitigate the issue by getting a better quality of projector screen, one that does ambient light rejection or higher gain and all those kind of things, grey type screens. There's various different options. So in the future, you might well see a different screen being reviewed on here as well. Now, of course, I will be putting some rather over-optimistic Amazon affiliated links in the video description, so I get a bit of a kickback if anyone clicks through to buy a Anker Nebula Cosmos 4K SE. But I would suggest don't just go straight there. I mean, see what the price is, but also go and have a look on the Anker website. They might be offering some kind of discount codes. I've seen that quite a few times. And in addition, of course, I did get a refurb one from Amazon that was from Anker themselves. And you might remember right back at the beginning of the video, I did mention that I wanted to find out how long it had been used for. Anyway, I did find the menu for that, and it's had some use. I mean, it's not like brand new. It's not just been taken out of the box, tried, and then put straight back. No, somebody has used this, but I wouldn't exactly call it worn out at this point. And also, the appearance of it was unblemished, indistinguishable from new. So I think it did all right with my refurb. It might be something that you want to consider as well if there's any of those there. But then again, also consider all the other projectors that are out there. This is just one of many. It's suited me, but you know, it might not suit everyone. In fact, it definitely won't. So in summary, I would say if you're thinking of getting a projector, well, think long and hard about it. I mean, you've got to perhaps also think about the screen and make sure you use that throw distance calculator with your shortlist to see if the projector that you're thinking of getting would work in your environment, and also set your expectations at a certain level to start with. I mean, I didn't set out with the expectation of making the perfect home cinema. I set out with creating something in the space that I got, reusing some of the equipment I'd already bought in the past. And I'm surprised about how well this has worked out for me. Normally when I try things like this, I'm a bit underwhelmed, but with this one, it's done really well, and I'm very happy. But of course, that doesn't mean that's the end of it. I'm going to be testing other things out with regard to projectors. I mentioned last time I've got a very cheap one, and I'll be interested to see how that compares to this. So there's plenty more to come on things like this, but for the moment, as it stands, if nothing changed, I'd be very happy with the way that this one's worked out. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.